Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome back, everybody. The Fantasy Football Fanalist live stream presented by Fantasy Data. Tonight, we have a special guest joining us as we cover our Fantasy Football rookie preview for 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Seth Keller. Seth is a writer and media team member for Gridiron Experts and NFL Draft Bible on SI.com. He is the co-host of the Fantasy, is it Facts?
Facts, yep.
Facts podcast and a median PPG believer. Why don't you walk us through that, Seth? Welcome.
Yeah. So which part, the median part or the writing part? Because the median part throws everybody off. Yeah. So I work with Gridiron Experts. I've written for them for about 2 years. My co-host Pat Loftus at Dynasty_Pat, and I do the GX Fantasy Facts. FAQS, nice little play on words. Hopefully it doesn't cause any issues with people typing it in there, but Fantasy Facts, FAQS. Yeah, I've been doing that for a little while. And I'm also part of the team that just launched the NFL Draft Bible on Sports Illustrated. If you go to any of those websites and you see an interactive table, I've had my hands kind of all over that. And in terms of a median points per game believer, I will verbally fight anybody that says that average points per game is a worthwhile stat. Only in the sense that it's, yes, better than a end of the year stat, but the mathematical premise behind averages is still using the end of the year total. So you're not untethering yourself by doing an average. All you did was add one little tiny piece of context, which is how many games that were played, because you're just taking the total and dividing it by that. Whereas median actually gives you a better understanding of how a player has performed, because you could have your average games. And I've done a lot of research on this. There's a bunch of guys who, in a 16-game season, and I only count the fantasy relevant ones, so there's only 15 games there, they could have 8-9 games under their average. So is that really useful to you to say oh, their average is 18 points a game, but they have more than, well more than half of their games well below that, whereas median is the exact 50th percentile, meaning that half of their games are above that number, half of their games are below that number. It's the definition of it. It gives you a slightly better look. And if you want to get real mathy, I could draw it at a normal curve and show you how in a non-normal distribution, median is actually closer to the hump that is created, whereas mean isn't. And it's a better estimation of where players actually are. There's my rant already. I apologize. We were talking about how we go off on rants on my show, but there's my rant already. Median points per game is better than average points per game, and I will be verbally, letting everybody know as we keep going.
I want a chart graph here from you right now on the spot. Stick figures, names. No, I'm just kidding.
No, Seth, you're speaking my language. I'm a math major undergrad, so all of that is, totally, it makes sense. And those are definitely the type of players that you got to keep your eyebrow raised a little bit for. And maybe with different strategies, those are players you target, but maybe not. Maybe those are players you avoid.
Yeah.
In most
so
leagues.
Off the top of your head, can you give me a player to where it's drastically changed your point of view on?
Tyler Lockett.
I was gonna say Tyler Lockett's in my head.
I have a article that's in editing right now for Sports Illustrated, hopefully dropping sometime after draft once we really kind of pick up more of the dynasty kind of steam. Right now it's all super draft focus. And I actually use Tyler Lockett as the example because his average points per game is in the top 12, at least through the first 16 weeks. I don't count week 17, but his average is in the top 12. But when you look at his median points per game, PPR is only 10.9. His average is 14 or 15 point something.
Because he has a huge week.
It's right. There's a couple huge weeks that he has. And so when you look at his games charted, you see that he has this massive weight of games that are all like sub 10, sub 15 PPR points. And if you're going to hit around 10.9, which was his median, and I actually throw this in the article, and I don't know if it'll get past editing or not. It's extra numbery. It's like 10.9 was wide receiver 37, 38, 39, 46. And I went through all the weeks last year, and you would not be happy if you had Tyler Lockett in your lineup on a weekly basis, even though his average points per game was 15. That's a wide receiver, that's a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 weekly production. And that's where the issue becomes. You think that's what his typical game's going to be because it's his average, and it's not even close. Whereas his median at 10.9 was so much more consistent with what his actual gameplay was.
See, that's why I like him in best ball this year rather than like redraft or even in dynasty, because you can hit on those big weeks and it doesn't matter. You're not like you're trying to pick and choose when he's going to hit your lineup or when he's not going to hit. And so I think as a best ball draft right now in best ball season, he's been falling like round 7 for me. I'm willing to take that gamble in that round for that kind of upside, but on a weekly basis, having to manage it, I think I'd look the other way too.
That's tough. I mean, he is going, FFPC, wide receiver 28? I still think that's too low, even for a player as inconsistent as he's going over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are kind of hitting on 2 points there. And like one of them, like the best ball point, I want to do a little bit more research on this, but there's actually a mathematical formula to figure out whether or not a game is an outlier. And I can actually make all that little magic happen in my spreadsheets. And so one of the things I want to do is actually pinpoint who are the guys that have those massive boom outlier weeks, so that when we're talking best ball, there's actually more than just a narrative behind it of, oh yeah, he's really good for best ball because and like it's actually like, no, he's good for best ball because 3 out of his 15 or 16 eligible games are outlier games, and that's better than 86% of the rest of the players, because most players fit in their kind of realm, whereas there's a handful of them that have these massive boom outlier weeks. And then in terms of like where he's actually going in drafts, that's tough right now because there's still so much that can happen with Seattle. But I think it might be a little early. You said 24 or 28?
28.
28. Yeah, that's kind of right around where I think I'd have him. And that like back end of the wide receiver 2s, or really like the front end of the wide receiver 3s. I think that's kind of where I'd have him, because that's kind of where I'd want him on my team. Like I would not want him to be my wide receiver 1 or 2, but if I already have 2 solid guys and I get Lockett that I can kind of play around with and get another guy that I can kind of play around with, rotating them in. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like that's,
he fits in, especially a best ball. If he's your wide receiver 3 and then you get a boom week from a player like that, that's winning.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
All right, Bill, is it time?
I think it's time. I love Tyler Lockett, but I think people are logging in like, I thought they were talking about rookies. What's happening here?
Well, Tyler Lockett did get an extension this offseason, so something fresh, something new. Mm-hmm. We'll start with running backs in this rookie class. The draft is less than a week away. It's a very exciting time. And there are 2 running backs that are really on most dynasty boards going like 101, 102, et cetera, if you're in a one quarterback league. And we'll start with the first one on the list here, Najee Harris. Najee measures 6'2", 230, and he could have declared last year, but he didn't. And didn't have as much hype last year. He had, in some mocks I was looking at about 15 months ago, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers all going ahead of Najee Harris, which tells you how weak this 2021 running back class is relative to last year. Harris was utilized at Alabama during his senior season, especially on pass downs. He had the 89th percentile college target share for a running back, which you want that if you're especially in a PPR league. And looking at a few scouting comps, those range from like Matt Forte to Joe Mixon. So like RB2, maybe RB back end, RB1 upside if he's used in the pass game, and he's not like super speedy. But I think for Najee Harris, and this is just my opinion, like draft capital is going to be huge for draft capital, and location are going to be huge for projecting where he's going to go. Is he going to be more of a middling RB2, or is he going to get the full workload? And I mean, Peter Schrager recently mocked Harris not making the first round. So there's some concern here that maybe he's not, the teams are not seeing him as high, and maybe he won't get the RB1 workload you're looking for if you have the 101 in a one quarterback league.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
for it, Seth.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you hit on a really good point about, maybe it's a business decision by Harris to, instead of going out last year with, you mentioned it, like Jonathan Taylor, Dobbins, Akers, Swift, CEH, like there was 5 guys right there that are like, boom, they're all really good. And I think Harris kind of fits in with some of them. I don't think, time will tell whether or not he kind of does. But I think Harris has the ability to kind of, I think he's far and away the running back one in this group. To me, he's, without a doubt, he is the running back one. And I think that's the business decision that he made, was instead of being the running back, 1 to 6, maybe 7, depending on where, everybody starts playing that little, you know the little board game where you're always jumping the pegs around and trying to clear it, and you never can. Is, you know what I'm talking about? That's what I feel like everybody does with like draft, especially in Twitter, where it's like we get to the point where it's like, wait a minute, where's Najee Harris? He's still number 1. You know what? Let's try and mess it up somehow. Let's start talking about Jovanta Williams. He's now the number 1. Let's talk about, and you almost get like that burnout sense, but he is the number 1 in this group. I mean, he has the size, he has the pedigree, he has the wide receiving chops. There's a bunch of plays where you can watch him where, he runs a little route and his quarterback gets flushed, and he runs and gives his quarterback an opportunity, which, not to spoil anything, but Bradley, one of the guys that you put down, didn't do this in like what I was watching, and that's kind of like a little knock on my end. But like, he has all of those components, and he's really, like, he's good between the tackles, he's good outside the tackles, he can make the first guy miss, he can carry a guy, he can run a guy over, he can, he has a decent jump cut, a decent spin, a hurdle. Like, he has all of the tools in his toolbox. And I think it was a really smart decision to come out this year rather than last year, because like I said, if he comes out last year, who knows where he falls in that pecking order. And as much as, we can sit here and talk our way around in circles about where he could be in those groups, we'll have something to kind of compare at the end of this year where we could say, wow, he really did fit in with these guys, or wow, he really did not fit in with those guys. Look at what his numbers look like at the end of his rookie year compared to, that plethora of backs that came out in 2020.
So 2 things here. If you could have a dream landing spot, where would you see Najee Harris landing? dream?
Ooh, dream for real life or dream for my own fantasy teams? Because I'm still holding out hope that like Myles Gaskin can kind of be a thing in at least one or two leagues. But I think Miami's really a really great spot for him. I think Miami's doing a lot of the right things in terms of building that team.
Yes, I do too.
And I think he can be the type of player that can give Tua, assuming Tua takes the step forward, which I believe he will. I mean, they shipped off Fitzpatrick. I think
Fitzmagic, please.
You're right, Fitzmagic. The beard knows. Yeah, but he gives Tua a passing option. He also can keep the defense honest. So if they don't put 5, 6, 7 guys in the box to respect the run, then he's going to be able to slash through whatever defense he's kind of up against. Maybe not whatever, because there's obviously steps up in defense. But he's going to be able to take advantage of first down, second down, third down work, especially in a team like Miami. I think the Jets might also be a decent landing spot.
What about Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh came to mind for me.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh makes me a little bit nervous because I feel like that whole team is aging, except for like their wide receivers. Like that whole team seems
the window's closing.
Yeah, they seem to be at that age cliff where I'm a little nervous of the Pittsburgh offensive line that has been so dominant for so long. Are they going to hit kind of that age cliff? Like my Cowboys kind of hit that age cliff, and literally all 5 starting linemen are done in a season. And
it was
now
a brutal,
what do you have,
brutal year
right?
for that
and
line.
You also have Big Ben, who's older, and he may have another couple years, but he could also be on that downward trajectory that nobody kind of wants to acknowledge because he's been there for so long and he's done so much for that team. He could kind of end up like that, and that makes me a little nervous about Harris going there, but they need a running back there also. So
yeah, can't trust Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland. Let's be real.
I mean, my 1 or 2 shares of Anthony McFarland on a taxi squad would all, they'd be all right. We can give him a little trust, just a little. Give him a chance.
And every time Benny Snell runs, I'm looking at him like, man, it looks like this man's running through quicksand. Like he is so slow. Like unleash the bus, buddy, and like get downfield because he looks so slow on film. Like compared to everyone else on the field, like it looks like he's about to get the corner and then like no, he gets tackled by the guy that was 3 yards away from him because he's just slow like that.
Yeah.
So next on the list we have is Travis Etienne, and he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and his efficiencies went down in 2020. And we do see that Clemson lost a lot of talent to the rookie draft last season. And this year we had Trevor Lawrence used Etienne as a lot of short passes in 2020, resulting in 48 receptions on 12 games. What are your thoughts on Travis Etienne and again, dream landing spots?
So Etienne is one of those guys that I'm gonna keep going back and watching because what I see with Etienne is not necessarily what everybody else does. I think he's still like, for me, Najee Harris, like I said, he's far and away the 1, and then I think Etienne's the 2 for me, but I'm not. It's like one of those things where I'm not confident. I feel like a lot of other people are kind of like, nope, he's locked in number 2. There's a little bit with Jovanta Williams kind of in there, but this next kind of little group of guys, like I'm going to keep going back and watching, especially after the draft to kind of look at like, all right, they're now in this type of offense. This type of offense runs a lot more, maybe it's a stretch zone type of run scheme. Maybe it's a little bit more power run scheme. I get a little nervous with Etienne from what I've seen in terms of he doesn't seem to have the elusiveness that I hear a lot of other people kind of trumpeting for him. And that was kind of my like thing with CH also. It's like there's moments where he's super elusive. And then there's moments where it's like, wait, he just got taken down by that guy? Like he didn't come up with anything more creative to try and escape that. And it's little things like that over watching a few of them, it's like, how come what is everybody else watching that I'm getting stuck on some of these things? And that's where, I really like to look at my own thought process with these rookies, because there is some truth to consensus, right? There's like wisdom of the crowd is actually a statistician term, right? But like whenever I have a guy that I just can't quite, I'm not quite there with everybody. Like he's 2 for me, but I feel like he's gonna fall, and especially if he doesn't go to a team where I feel like he's going to get those short little passes and be involved a little bit more. He's gonna get knocked a little bit more on my end. Like if he goes, I'm trying to think of if he goes to. Oh man, he's not even the starting quarterback right now. But I'm thinking of a guy like Trubisky, like with the Bears, maybe like Josh Allen, like a quarterback that would tuck the ball and run versus dumping it off. Like to me, that's going to so greatly hinder his value. Even though there's that, running quarterbacks actually help running backs. Yes, but they also hurt them a little bit in PPR because
tell that to everyone who drafts, Damian Harris and wants touchdowns. It's.
Yeah,
Cam Newton's taking those touchdowns.
Yeah.
So something that with Travis Etienne that really just that I can't get over with, at least right now. And I agree with you. He's like outside Najee Harris. Everyone else for like the next 2 or 3 backs are pretty interchangeable to me. And I think one knock right here on Travis Etienne is his ability to carry the load, because he hasn't really done the carries that you see some of these backs come in to the pros carrying. So. I mean, do you think that that's something that's are his legs fresh? Is it going to help him? Do you think it's going to, teams are going to stray away from it and maybe not trust giving him the workload? Or how do you think that that's going to kind of take in his draft stock?
I think that's going to be landing spot dependent. I've heard the narratives a bunch of times, and I haven't done my own kind of looking at the numbers about, this college guy got so many touches, and then when he got to the pros, this is what happened. Like, there's a lot of narrative out there about that. And maybe it's just me. I haven't gone in and looked at those numbers that closely yet to be able to say like, yeah, there is kind of a threshold there, or there is a really strong correlation between guys that have, they have 3 200 plus touch seasons in college, and then when they come out into the pros, they kind of get put on a pitch count because their legs aren't fresh, or they're good for a season or 2, but then they get dinged up. But we're also dealing with the most violent position, one of the most violent positions on the field, in that they're actually going out and seeking contact. And, seeking contact with another person that is, seeking their contact also. Like, you don't get that all over the field like you do with the running back position. So there's a lot of variables that go into that. So I'm not ready to say that yet, but I definitely could see that being a narrative. And being a narrative that turns out being true, right? I'm using narrative in kind of a negative way here, but there is a reason why narratives, get spun in the first place. So I could see that being a narrative that could become true. But I'm not ready to be afraid of workload for him. I would be more afraid of his workload if he went to a place where you're going to get running backs kind of in the mix, or there's already a running back that's already there that you're like, oh man, like I don't know how they're going to split the time here. This would be a really, like, are they just going to split it down the middle 50-50? That would be my bigger concern, is that landing spot.
Peter Schrager has Etienne mocked in a 2.0 going to Washington in the first round, the only first round running back. So
that would suck.
It would really suck for all the Gibson shares. It would also suck for all the Etienne shares. So, yikes! I know you want to add weapons, but that's the most recent mock from Schrager.
And it's already driving me to drink here. I mean, like, that's just such a bad landing spot.
And that's exactly what I was saying. Like if he does go to Washington, that hurts him for me even more, because it's like, what's the split going to be? And Gibson's already a receiving back. Like,
and there's McKissick.
Unless we're deciding he's going to run up the middle now, like.
He was sneaky productive in the passing game. That people were always like, oh, because McKissick had like 100 targets, but they failed to see that, like, I think Gibson had like, was it like 47 or like 50, almost 50 targets. And like they failed to see like actually how much he was used in the passing game. Mm-hmm. But all right, who's next on our list here?
Jovanta Williams. So I have him. He's the prototypical stud running back, 5'10", 212, 69th percentile in dominator rating, when he was sharing the backfield still with Michael Carter, who's later on this list at North Carolina. His 7.3 yards per carry, 93rd percentile, 71st percentile in burst score, extremely high agility score, 89th percentile. And the thing I really like about Williams is he showed big jumps every year, like big growth every year over his 3 years at UNC. He was the number 1 overall running back in the NCAA in PFF grade in 2020, after being just 14th overall last year. His comps, Noshawn Moreno to Aaron Jones. And for those who don't remember Noshawn Moreno, he had a couple.
That's an interesting comp. I mean,
yeah, 900 to 1,000 yards a couple times for Denver, but a very short career. Whereas Aaron Jones, much more of an explosive pass catching back as well. He's caught past 89% college career reception rate, elusive, but he also broke a lot of tackles. He set the PFF record for most broken tackles per attempt, with almost 1/2 of a broken tackle every time he ran the ball. He's a projected second-round pick in next week's draft. And as y'all were saying, he's, I think, interchangeable in this upper tier of Etienne, Devonte Williams. It'll be interesting where he lands, but I think very much more of a one and two down back than as Etienne would be.
Yeah, and I'm actually I cheated and looked at the show sheet. I'm really interested to see what Billy has to say about him also before I jump into mine.
I'm not a fan, and I'm going to say it. I've watched tape, and like, to me, like, I don't think he's that quick, that fast, like looking at him on tape, and he's very violent. He's a violent runner, and he's got really good balance. I'll give him that. But I don't think it's going to translate well to the NFL. I mean, he's doing this at the college level. I mean, he's not that great of a pass catcher. I mean, technically, looking at his statistics, he's really a one-year wonder, right? 2018, 2019 are nothing to really be like impressed by. And I mean, he runs over NCAA guys. Okay, yes. I just don't think he's going to do it at the pro level. I mean, he's not that big. I mean, he's okay, but the way he runs, like, honestly, like, I could see him taking like the Thomas Rawls route and, like, leg injuries and getting hurt quick and early in his career. Like, I think he's going to be more Thomas Rawls than he's going to be like, who was like Aaron Jones. Like, I don't even think that's a good comp, quite frankly. I could see him being kind of like a mini Marshawn, but I just don't think he's going to reach that level. I really don't. And I'm on an island here. I know I'm going to probably be like blocked and attacked on Twitter for this take, but I don't care. I'll stand on this hill.
I think the only thing you should be attacked for in that is like the Thomas Rawls. Don't do that to the poor kid now. Come on. That was
pretty low. It was pretty low.
His future's still bright ahead of him. Don't put Thomas Rawls out there. Rolls Royce.
You have to admit, though, you kind of went maybe.
What's interesting is, not to jump the show sheet any. I actually like Michael Carter more. I mean, that doesn't mean that I dislike Jovanta Williams. I think he's still kind of in this group of guys. But I think Michael Carter has the opportunity to really surpass him, not only in fantasy, but also in like real football. I think like the way he gets used, I think could be a lot better for Michael Carter than Jovanta Williams. And you're 100% correct with like the one-hit wonder type of deal where and I wish I had the stats pulled up right in front of me, but he went from like 5 touchdowns, 22 touchdowns. And it's like,
and like the yardage were the same thing. It just astronomically jumped.
Yeah. And, ask anybody who's doing any type of work on correlations and probabilities and stuff like that with like, oh, well, what leads to what? Like touchdowns are one of the most inconsistent kind of stats we get. And a lot of the setup was Michael Carter broke a good run, got them within the 5, and then Jovanta Williams punched it in from the 5. And that's fine for him. That could be a really good role for him. And I feel like I'm going to be mean now too, but like I could see him kind of being like Jordan Howard, but can catch a little bit.
So he's LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah, he could
with better hands than Blunt.
He does, and I'll give him that. Like there's times where
he's got Thomas Rawls' hands. I'm just.
Oh man, we're being so mean to this poor Devonte Williams.
I don't like him, man. I don't like him.
But that's the thing, though. Like, he's one of the guys where, like, I can get behind him being somebody's like 2, 3, 4, anywhere in that range. When I hear people saying that he's above like Najee Harris,
it's crazy.
And like people's number 1, I get real skeptical because it's like, what? And that's where it's like, okay, what is this person seeing that I'm not? And it doesn't mean that I have to agree with it. I just want to know what did you see that makes him a number 1 for you? That for me, it's like I could drop the Jovanta Williams down to like RB5, RB6, depending. Especially come draft time, like I could drop him down to there,
and he could arguably be below Chuba for me.
Yeah, I think is Chuba the one that you put in the show sheet also there, Billy?
I did.
Okay,
I feel like we should.
That's a real interesting one, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't know.
Well, we'll talk about Michael Carter. We'll jump the gun a little bit and come back to our number 4. But Michael Carter, since we're on him, 5'8", 201, and yes, I think I was a little generous with his weight, but we round up when we're talking about our running backs. Carter is small though. There's no rounding up from 5'8".
I think you gave him 2 pounds though.
Look, I was being generous. I was in a generous mood when writing the show outline here. But he was a running back. We talked about Devonte Williams making big leaps, but Carter's also one that not only did he ascend year by year, but game by game. If you look at his PFF grade throughout 2020, every single game he improved, which is outstanding. You usually see valleys and peaks, but to improve every game is phenomenal. He finished with a 91.7 PFF grade. Really, really good. 97th percentile in yards per carry, 98th percentile in agility score. These are better than Devonte Williams. So I think that it is within the range of outcomes for sure that he outproduces him in real life and in fantasy. Breakout age of 19 years old. That's exactly what you want to see is a 19-year-old breakout age. He's everything you want except the size. That's where the question marks come in. And he can certainly prove those wrong. Sky's the limit for him. He can catch the football. He's elusive, but can he pass protect? That's the number 1 question given his size. His comps range from Andre Ellington, who had a few good years, to Devonte Freeman, who was at one point the number 1 running back overall in fantasy. So sky is the limit, very wide range of outcomes. And he's a projected 3rd round pick for next week's draft. And, I can definitely see a lot of hype behind Michael Carter here.
Yeah, and I may be on my island here for my Michael Carter love, and I wrote up
wait, hold up,
profile for him. And
can you say that again, Michael Carter? What?
What'd I say? RB2?
Michael Carter love, he said, and it's
there we go.
There it is.
Like what? Wait, what'd I say?
All right, you can keep talking.
Did you say he was your RB1?
Oh no. He could jump up to be my RB2. And that's I think you have a really interchangeable group of guys here. He could be my RB2, especially depending on what happens in what is it now? Next Thursday. What is that? Like 5-6 days away? Something. I'm
6
bad.
days.
But I'm bad with my days of the week, especially in quarantine. Whatever. Don't joke. So like
he can memorize every single player's points per game average, but he can't tell you what day of the week it is.
Yeah, that just completely threw me. Anyways, Michael Carter. I love the explosiveness. I love the ability for him to be able to see what's happening in front of him. I like the way that you see the difference in kind of running styles with the two guys. And what I think is actually what's great, and we don't get this enough, is you get a really good look at players that are playing against the same defense, and you get that with Jovanta Williams and Michael Carter.
Yeah.
And there's so much argument about, if this guy played with this offensive line, then he would have been that. They played with the same offensive line. If this guy played with this quarterback, then he would have been so much better. They have this same quarterback, and I think you're getting the trend here. If this guy played against these defenses, then he would have been crushed all the time. And it's like, well, they played against the same defenses. And you can actually look on a game-by-game basis. And there's some games where, Jovanta Williams scores the touchdowns, but Michael Carter put in all the work. And, you're always going to be caught in that kind of catch-22 with fantasy football because touchdowns are worth the most, but they're inconsistent. Whereas yardage and receptions are a lot more consistent, but if the touchdowns aren't there, they don't have as big a boom week. And so it was really fun to watch the cut-ups of Jovanta Williams in a game, and then watch the cut-ups of Michael Carter in a game, and then watch the cut-ups of Michael Carter in a different game, and then watch the cut-ups of Jovanta Williams. And you just saw, at least I saw, Michael Carter exposing more weaknesses in the defense and being able to do more against the defense than you were seeing Jovanta Williams do. And as far as pass blocking, there were some plays where both Michael Carter and Jovanta Williams just completely whiffed on guys. Like they just did not do enough. But then there was also like some issues with like Sam Howell, like holding on to the ball way too long. And, the running backs, both of them, both Michael Carter and Jovanta Williams, did what you expected of them. They got in the way of the defender. They slowed him down for at least a 1-2 count. But Sam Howell held the ball, and you're not going to stop a 300-pound defensive end who's barreling at you when you're even Jovanta Williams, who's, what is he, 5'10", 215, somewhere in that range. You're not stopping that for long enough, right? But both of them proved that they're willing to go up against that guy. Both of them proved that on, when they're able to set up and when they're able to do kind of, they're able to see where that blitz is coming. They're able to communicate with the center and the offensive line to know which guy they have. They're able to pick it up for at least a 2 count to give their quarterback time to get rid of the ball. The quarterback just needs to get rid of it. And Sam Howell didn't at times. And at times he did, because that UNC offense looked pretty good. So I'm not as concerned with their pass blocking as like you kind of brought it up as like a knock against them. I'm not as concerned about it. I wouldn't want him to be in a situation where he's picking up like a Mike linebacker that has, a 5-yard like head of steam coming at him, because he's going to get in the way, but he's only going to get in the way for about a second, and
he's going to die.
Like,
he's going to die.
It's not going to be pretty. And hopefully he has a quarterback. Hopefully he has a quarterback that gets rid of it, that has that second and goes, oh, that guy's coming to end my life. Thank you, Michael Carter or Jovanta Williams. Both matters because they both did it equally well and equally bad at times. Thank you, guys. Let me throw the ball versus let me hold it, let me pump, let me look. Oh no! I threw an interception because I just got completely rocked, or I literally and there was literally a play where Sam Howell got hit and he's like, and the ball just like like fell into the linebacker's hand, and I don't know if they called that a fumble or an interception, but it went back for 6. So hopefully a pro quarterback doesn't do that, and not to knock Sam Howell, because I think he's going to be really good, especially as he develops. But yeah, I really like Michael Carter, and a little bit more than Jovanta Williams, and I think he brings a really nice package to a pro football team.
Awesome.
The
last running back on our list, Kenny Gainwell. Now, there are some questions about Gainwell because he did opt out of the 2020 season. So there's risk baked into this stock here. He's 5'11", 195, running back, slot receiver, a hybrid. He started as a quarterback, but then committed to Memphis as a wide receiver and then switched to running back. So he's been all over the place. Runs a 73rd percentile 40-yard dash. He has middling metrics the rest of the way, though. Definitely a skilled pass catcher, perhaps one of the most accomplished pass catchers in this group. And I think he would be an intriguing ad for teams looking for weapons. Maybe not necessarily a starting running back, but definitely a weapon. The Titans come to mind, maybe to help Derrick Henry, especially with the loss of Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis, etc., and only filling it with Josh Reynolds and Anthony Firkser. My boy, Anthony Firkser. The Green Bay Packers could use a player like that to step in for Jamal Williams. The Bengals, with losing Gio Bernard, I don't think Samaje Perine has that skill set. The Falcons could use a player. It says no.
They could use any player at running back right now, the Atlanta Falcons.
And that would be fantasy relevant for sure.
Oh, are you saying that my boy Mike Davis can't get it done?
Nope, he can't get it.
I'm going to go with it is unlikely. Like I would say like 70%, maybe 75% unlikely that he's able to handle the load in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's we saw him really fizzle out with the Panthers after he got, a few really big boom weeks and then just middling the rest of the way in Christian McCaffrey's stead. Gainwell comps to Theo Riddick, and right now Theo Riddick has a better taste in his mouth or our mouths as fantasy player because he's on the Vegas Raiders and he shows up as stealing targets from Josh Jacobs. But he
shows up.
Yeah. Isn't that Kenyon Drake's job this year? Because now they have Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs.
Well, I mean, it's true, but
it's anybody's but Josh Jacobs' job.
That's true. So I think Kenny Gainwell could be a really useful, especially if you're like Billy and I play in some really bizarre leagues where running backs get super duper catch bonus points. So I think Kenny Gainwell is an interesting weapon, and it'll be interesting to see where he actually lands given his 3rd round projection.
See, for all these players, we're talking Carter, Gainwell, Javonte Williams. I mean, and even Travis Etienne, all of these guys, for me, it's going to be very dependent upon landing spot. And, because, I mean, Kenneth Gainwell or Michael Carter could shoot up to number 2 for me on this list if they land in the right position. And realistically, I mean, and we said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's interchangeable for me after Najee Harris, because I think Najee Harris, hands down, is the best skilled player out of all these running backs. Where the rest of these guys, it's going to really be, is he going to fit the system? Is he going to fit the scheme? Is he really going to, work out with the coach? And I think, Gainwell has great hands and great agility, but for me, it really has to be a good landing spot.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with the landing spot piece, and I think the landing spot's going to be even more interesting because, like Bradley said earlier, of him opting out the entire 2020 season. And this draft class is even more difficult to really get a grasp on because of so many different variables. Like guys that played part of the year and then opted out the rest of the year, or guys that opted out the entire year. And then you're basing it all off of, film, stats, everything that's a year old. What did they do in their year off? Are they, they're going to be professional athletes. So I'm not questioning, did they get fat on burritos or something like that? But
pulling Eddie Lacy.
Yeah. Were they working on Like, what parts of their game were they working on?
It wasn't burritos though; it was China food for Eddie Lacy.
Yeah. Oh man. He's like James Harden, where like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, somebody photoshopped that picture, and then you find out that no, that's really how he looks right now. Okay, yeah. That's a lifestyle choice. Good for them, I guess. But Kenny Gainwell to me is a guy who, again, you put him in the right system, and I feel like it gets a little redundant, but it's so true. You put him in the right system, and he has a really good, like, one cut, get up the field, outrun, a linebacker or a safety that has an angle on him. Give him a little angle route across the face of a linebacker. Give him an option route where he can break it in or out in the face of the linebacker, and he's going to get open on those even in the pros. The question is, like, what type of offense is he going to be in order to be able to do those? And the reason why Kenny Gainwell is going to stay, lower on my list of running backs is because I don't have faith in him running it between the tackles in the same way that I would like Michael Carter, obviously Jovanta Williams, even Etienne. I think is a better between the tackles runner than Kenneth Gainwell is. So that's where my hesitation falls with him. He could prove me wrong come this first year, but right now I don't see him being the type of guy that's going to, take a run through the A gap, then take a run through the A gap again, then, then be like ready for a stretch run play. Like I don't see that from him. If you gave him, it's second down, we're in a decent position, the defense can't tell if we're going to run or pass. Now we run a draw or a stretch run or run like a little play action, an RPO. So I'm like, something where it gets the defense guessing. He's going to be just fine. If it's just, all right, we're running a dive. He's not my guy. He's not my guy for a dive.
And he's not built that way. He's 195. I mean, to put a bow on like our top five, like I just want to bring it back to how, like we talked about how all of these players or most of the running backs are really dependent upon landing spot. And that was not really the case for many of the running backs who were in the top tier last year. Like think about Jonathan Taylor, wherever he was going to go, he's going to be the feature back. Wherever DeAndre Swift was going to be, he's going to get the majority of carries. I mean, Adrian Peterson, right? But I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, fits into almost like a comp of these types of players where, he shot up the draft board, taking the 101 in many rookie drafts because of his landing spot. And so I think that there's, at least a little bit of caution that even with a landing spot, maybe we should caution on the hype, even with the landing spot.
I've always said skill over system as my go-to, because systems change. And if that player has the skill, he's going to be able to play in any system. And maybe not any system. That's a stretch, but he's going to be able to play in a lot of systems based upon the skills that he has. And I think that if they have the skills, you can't dock them from them. Where like you said, anything can change in a system.
Yeah. And I will say I was very adamant about telling a lot of people that if you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire ranked as your 6th running back, and then the draft happened, and then he became your number 1, you're doing it wrong. I saw so many people that did that. And I said it the whole way through, like that's not good, like thought process there, right? Like you took him, you didn't think he was better than these 5 other guys, but then just going to Kansas City made him that much better. And I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still going to be all right. I think he's going to bounce back this year, probably with him being healthy. But same thing with these group of guys. If you have somebody, like Kenneth Gainwell that goes to a good landing spot and you're like, nope, he's the 101 now, you're doing it wrong again. Even the process is wrong. Najee Harris, Man, I even if he goes to like a god awful situation, I still think Najee Harris is the 101. So please temper your expectations when they get into a team and a scheme, especially if you didn't have them already ranked high based on their skill. And that's why I think doing kind of these pre-draft rankings are important, because you can kind of go, just based on what I saw ahead of time, this is where these guys shake out. Same thing with like, rookie mock drafts now, right? It's just based on their skill. And that's important to have in your mind, so that now after the draft, you can go, all right, wait. I thought this guy was terrible, but then I jumped him up here. Let me think about why am I doing that? And I just don't think enough people have that level of like metacognition to think about their thinking, to be able to say like, you know what, I should probably tone that down a little bit, just a little bit.
Alrighty, so now it's time for our bonus running backs. So
we're gonna go through these real quick. Billy, you mentioned yours earlier, but we're just gonna go through these rapid fire. Billy, who's your bonus running back?
Chuba Hubbard. And I just like the track background. I love the speed. I love the fact that he's shown the ability to carry a heavy load. 26 carries a game is what he averaged in 2019. Great vision, great speed, and I think he has enough burst to create big plays. And for somebody that you're going to take probably in round 2 of fantasy drafts, I think he's worth the upside.
Yeah.
All right.
I think just with the weirdness of COVID, like him being not quite as good as he was in the past, I still haven't figured out how to actually grade that out yet. And I don't think anybody
he was a much better prospect in 19 than he was in 20.
Right. And that's where it's like, it's such a weird year. So how do we rate that against any other year? Because this year was so weird. And that's where it's like, I think you're right. I think he could be a steal, especially in rookie drafts, because there's no telling how much did the weirdness of 2020 impact his season. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. A little bit of Hubbard love right there. We're going to shift to mine, and this is the featured special. Seth, you get to experience Bradley's bonus running back deep cut of the week, brought to you by Grocery Outlet Bargain Market.
Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. Welcome to Bargain Bliss.
All right. And my deep cut of the week, Eliza Mitchell, running back, rookie, 5'10", 210 pounds, 97th percentile 40-yard dash, 86th percentile speed score, 88th percentile burst score, 79th agility score, and 59th percentile college dominator rating. Very high yards per carry. His relative athletic score, 9.5 out of 10, ahead of Jovanta Williams, Etienne, or Carter. He played 4 years at Louisiana Lafayette. So, yes, that is one of the knocks against him, his level of play for sure. But he had 3 years of excellent production, showed out as a runner. Yes, his size is the concern, but his speed is not. And if a team utilizes him in a speed role, that's really great. Looking at a little bit of film beforehand, and he just found the hole and snuck right through it. His range of outcomes in comps, TJ Yeldon to Jerick McKinnon. So if you can get a really late Eliza Mitchell, someone that, not a lot of hype has been around for someone. I mean, Yeldon at points where it was a running back 2 in Jacksonville for PPR. So these are usable fantasy comps, and that's what we're looking for, is really deep, usable cuts. If he's a day 3 pick, given the right situation, could be a nice starter if he's given the opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm a little more skeptical of Eliza Mitchell. I think when I watch him, he runs very upright. And for a guy that's like 5'10", he's not that short in terms of running backs. And he just runs really upright. There's like moments where it's like a lack of creativity, where like he has a guy one-on-one and it's like, oh, there's about to be a big, oh no, he's down. What happened?
Yeah, he seems to be getting taken down pretty quickly if he doesn't like run past them.
Right. And even some of his big runs,
he gets caught. There were a couple where he did get caught.
Well, I was gonna say some of his big runs are actually like he gets a really good block or he gets a safety out of position, and that's what springs his big run. And that's where kind of like the scouting game gets difficult, because it's like, how much of this was this player versus the 21 other players on the field, plus all the coaches that are next to them, plus the other 40 something guys that are on the sidelines too. Like, there's so many different variables that go into it. And for me, it seemed like his success was more kind of that was terrible. He found success because of other things happening around him, more so than him creating the success. And that's what makes me a little bit more skeptical. But like you said, super deep, you get him at a bargain, why not swing away? Especially in fantasy, why not swing away? In the pros, he could go as a day 3 type of guy that, again, why not swing away? And you could get a guy that has the speed, has the the agility. You can build a little bit on, even especially at a pro facility with pro trainers and pro strength and like strength management type of guys. Like, you're getting
coaches,
right? I don't know why coach just suddenly like slipped out of my mind there. Like, you're gonna build it. He could be, but I'm really skeptical on what that is for him. So
that's why we do these deep cuts.
Yeah. All right, who's yours, Seth?
I had 3 guys that I was flip-flopping back and forth between before the show. I'm going to go with Javian Hawkins, who's another track guy. He ran the 100 meters in 10.77, which is really nice. He ran the 40 in 4.4. He is a shorter, smaller guy. He's only 5'8", 183. He ran a really nice sub-7 3-cone, though. What's really interesting about him is his history. He's like technically a sophomore because he was a freshman that played a game or 2 and then redshirted due to injury, and then played his freshman year like twice, and then is now technically a sophomore, even though he has like 3 years worth of, granted his first year was minimal kind of numbers, but he does a lot of the explosive things that I kind of want Elijah Mitchell to do, and sometimes doesn't. Javian Hawkins does it. You're just not going to get him as much of a discount as you would Elijah Mitchell. But I could see Javian Hawkins being kind of like a Tariq Cohen, where he's a guy that can catch a lot of passes, and I hope I could see it happening, but I hope it doesn't, where he can run behind the line of scrimmage like back and forth 3 times and then find a gap and go. That always bothered me about Tariq Cohen, but I mean, he has the ability. He's shown it in college where he, shuffles, spins, breaks out the other way, and he's just faster than everybody, even the defensive end who's playing a decent technique, trying to shut down that cutback lane, and he's just so fast. A 6'3", 250-pound defensive end, just not catching him, right? And he has that really fast, explosive burst where he stops on a dime, he goes 0 to 60 in no time. I really like that kind of big playability for him. Again, not quite as much of a bargain as you might get with Elijah Mitchell, but I definitely think a lot more transferable skills right away to the pros with a guy like Javian Hawkins.
All righty, guys. So for time's sakes, let's run through the wide receivers here, spend like 3 to 5 minutes on each receiver and try to get through the receivers. I think it's pretty obvious. Kyle Pitts is easily the 101 in any tight end draft. The rest of them could probably not be mentioned. And quarterbacks, I think that we can skip for the night. But let's go ahead and run through, excuse me, let's run through the wide receivers quickly so that way we can get to our viewers and listeners.
Okay, well, wide receiver 1, it seemed to be the consensus message out today that Jamar Chase is the consensus wide receiver 1 out of LSU, 6 foot 201, under a 4.40, 95th percentile, speed score, 86th percentile, burst score 97th, just all the top tier percentile metrics here. College dominator rating 33.4%. College yards per reception is 96th percentile. Breakout age 19 and a half. So that's exactly what you want to see too, is a year 19 breakout. Once you start getting into the 20s, that's a little more questionable, but he meets that threshold. Player comps, Justin Blackmon to Odell Beckham. So very explosive wide range, but I feel like Blackman's career was tainted by other things. So
yeah. Yeah, and I really I think he tracks the ball well. I think he really is a true X receiver, which I think there's a handful of teams that I think are really going to need him here in the first 10 picks. And he gets off the line well. He's very physical, and he's got sneaky speed to me.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in there too. Like I think you're right with the true X, and I think this group of wide receivers, there's so many slot guys, and there's so many like Z wide receivers, and like to have a true X, and I think it's Chase, and I think it's far and away Chase. To have that true X is going to be really valuable in this draft class, and I think once Chase goes, I don't think you're going to see as many of those wide receivers go off the board as a lot of people I've seen kind of mock, where you get like 4 or 5 wide receivers going in the first round, and it's just like that's head scratching that it would be that many. But I think once Chase goes, there's going to be a pretty significant kind of gap there before you start seeing more wide receivers going off the board. And that's not necessarily a knock on the rest of the wide receiver class. I think that's props to Jamar Chase being that good that he's just head and shoulders above everybody else in this class. And, that's despite him not playing this year.
Yeah, he didn't play. So that tells you the type of transcendent player that Chase is. His trajectory is. There we go. So yeah, really excited. If a few more sneak in, probably near the end of the first round. So we'll see if the likes of Rashad Bateman, who's next for us, 6 foot 190. Yeah, he. The weight has been a question mark of whether he's more like 205 or whether he's 170. Like I don't know. There's been questions about Bateman's
or the height. Didn't he shrink like 2 inches from like what's listed and Minnesota's website versus what he actually got not weighed in, measured in at his pro day?
He's like my son standing on his tippy toes as I measure him against the wall.
Yeah, I get fudging like your license or driver's license numbers, but glad that the truth is coming out here. I still think that he's got a few of the measurables here, 73rd percentile 40-yard dash, but middling speed score, burst score. He had an 88th percentile college dominator rating for Minnesota, but he didn't have great yards per reception. His breakout age was under 19, and he comps to Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, that type of player. And I think it is Bateman number 2, but arguments can be made for other players, although they're more slot players than Bateman would be.
Seth, anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, those are really interesting comps to me because I didn't think his route running was his best attribute. And when you think of like Stephon Diggs, he has insane separation because of his route running. When you think of Keenan Allen, he has insane separation, not quite as much anymore because he's a lot older, but his separation has always been great because of his route running. And Bateman, to me, like there was a lot of things that were good on his tape. I don't think his route running was exceptional, though, in the same way that his player comps are. Bateman's one of the guys to me that, again, he's another guy that I'm going to go back and watch more of because I'm just not in love with what I'm seeing right now. It's good. Like, there's a lot of good things, but there's like, I don't see anything that's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at the way he does. Look at the way he goes into this cut and then breaks into that. Look at the way he sets up his defenders. Look at the way he does da 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 da. I don't have that with Bateman, and I feel like a lot of other people do. And so that's why, like, again, I want to go back into the tape and see, like, what is it that people are seeing that I'm not seeing. Doesn't mean that they're right or I'm right. It just means that I want to know where they're getting that take from, so that I can make my stance even more developed. And I'm just not there yet with Bateman. He's kind of like in that range of, like, there's like a group of them that's like 4 to 10 for me of wide receivers in this group that I kind of like. I like, but I don't like you. I just like you. Like,
we can be friends.
Yeah.
See, for me, I like his yards after the catch and what he can create on the field. I mean, he had 36 or out of 147 catches, 36 broken tackles. And so I just feel like his yards after the catch and what he can do. I thought from the limited film I watched on him I did think he was a good route runner. I don't think he was like Stephon Diggs type of route running. I think
who
that's,
is?
I think that's like giving who was it 2 extra pounds, right? I think it was, something along those lines. It's just a little extra for the decoration of the player. But I do think he's an above average route runner. I don't think he's the best route runner, but I think he's a pretty good route runner.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to knock. Like I said, I'm not like knocking his route running.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it, especially when I saw the comps, I was like, really? Because
because those are elite route runners,
right? And just like you said, above average, right? Good, like solid, but like elite. I don't see it with him. At least not yet. Maybe I will if I keep grinding the film and keep slowing it down and keep hammering away at it. Maybe I will. But right now,
I think you need to turn your laptop upside down. Maybe just.
Who knows?
It's probably in line with his height somewhere in his weight. So it's somewhere in between.
I just need to lower my laptop screen 2 inches and be like, I see it now.
Something. All right. 3 and 4 on our list are Rondelle and Elijah Moore. Both undersized wide receivers. Rondelle 5'7", 181, but super fast. We're talking 90 plus percentile for 40-yard dash burst score, agility score. He had an 18.2 breakout age, 99th percentile. He was breaking out at 18. Awesome. And his best comps include T.Y. Hilton, Steve Smith. So once again, undersized speedsters that were electric. So there's a lot of excitement about Rondelle Moore, much more of a slot receiver though, than perhaps T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah. And he plays physical. And I think that's where the Steve Smith comp comes in. But it also, you can see it in his injuries here. I mean, he hasn't played a full 13 games since 2018, and he hasn't played more than 4 since 2019. So, I mean, he's smart. What we saw, the highest spark score in the country here as well. Ability to stop and start on a dime, which I like as well. But the injuries to me are a little bit of a concern.
Yeah. I mean, I like Rondelle Moore, except for one thing that popped up in the tape, and it's like a pet peeve of mine. It's also why I knocked N'Keal Harry, and that seemed to be the right choice. So I don't know if it's the process was good or the results were good, but body catches. It's like a pet peeve of mine that, as a wide receiver and as a professional wide receiver, your hands should be in the right spot like 95 to 100% of the time. And if you're catching the ball into your body, especially with a small frame like Rondelle Moore, when you get faster, like longer corners playing against you, when you bring it into your body, you gave them a target to swipe at. And if you're doing that at the college level, I don't see a reason why you're changing for the pro level without like really refining your game. And yes, the pros have ways to do it, but right now, like that makes me a little bit nervous with Rondelle Moore. Is the body catches there? And are we just throwing both Rondelle Moore and Elijah Moore together here? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? The more the merrier.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call this podcast there, Billy.
Nice.
But I'm dumped.
Elijah Moore, and so it's so funny because you're getting both like pet peeves of mine. For Elijah Moore, he had good hands, smooth route running, real smooth in his like fluidity and everything. He had one game though against Alabama where a true freshman basically shut him down. And granted, it was a true freshman, and I talked about this in a podcast a few weeks ago, and it literally became like a trip down the rabbit hole where they looked up who the true freshman was that was playing against them, and it turns out it's Malachi Moore, I think, if I'm getting the name right, but he was like an all freshman, like all SEC, like first team, like all freshman defender. So like he was really good. But for you to be like taking the next step, that cornerback that shut you down in that game, and granted, everybody's allowed to have bad games, but I can't. This is where my metacognition, I know that it's like, I know my take is like not, it's like me being persnickety, and it may not be like the best way to do it. But I can't hear people talk up Elijah Moore without going, well, did you watch the game against Alabama where he got shut down by a true freshman?
I mean, how do you this kid could be the next Deion Sanders? You don't know. I mean,
right.
What if he is?
But he needs to be for Elijah Moore
For
the way that
Seth
some
to
people
be
love
in on
Elijah Moore. That kid needs to be the next Deion Sanders.
Well, the comps for Elijah Moore are Cole Beasley to Tyler Lockett. So your prototypical slot wide receiver here, 5'9", 178. I mean, if you get shut down, you get shut down. But a 52nd percentile in agility score. So maybe that's an issue. Although
when I saw the Cole Beasley comp, I couldn't help but laugh.
I mean, I'll take a free Cole. I mean, he's not going free in rookie drafts, but I mean, Cole Beasley has had some very useful seasons the last few years, being 30 years old.
Yeah, but to be drafted here at like number 4 receiver on a lot of people's lists, like I'm not taking Cole Beasley that early. You know what?
No, that's
one
fair.
One thing I'll always say about Cole Beasley, he's like 5'11" and he can windmill dunk. There's videos of him doing full on, like, toss the ball in the air, run up under it, catch it, and full on windmill dunk.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Anybody questioning, like, oh, I could do what a professional athlete does. Yeah, I can run a 4.5 40. No, you can't. Sit down. Be humble. But it's not typical for somebody that's 5'11" to be able to do something like that. So yeah, Cole Beasley, again, little Cowboys love there, but I've always really enjoyed him. And if Elijah Moore turns into that, that's good. But I've heard people like have him all the way up in, top 3, 2, 1. I hear a lot of crazy things, but I'm nowhere near that with Elijah Moore. I think he could definitely be on the field, especially with special teams play and stuff like that. I'm not that excited fantasy wise, unless he's on a team that I know is going to use him as like a healthy Tavon Austin, a healthy Percy Harvin, like if he's being used like that, sign me up. Otherwise,
I mean, the Packers could use anybody. So as you can tell by Robert Tonyan jersey and Packers mini helmets back there.
Have him be the Packers Randall Cobb, sign me up.
Deal.
Yeah.
That's a good
The
comp.
last receiver we have on our list is Devonta Smith.
Heisman winner Devonta Smith.
And I mean, for me, he is the only one for me that is even in comparison to Jamar Chase. And I know there's a lot of knock on his weight here. I mean, Bradley tried to silence me here. He edited my thing. I don't give a shit. And I will not be silenced, Bradley. I will not be silenced. I mean, that's his con. Everyone talks about weight. Oh, it's his weight. He weighs 170. He's going to get hit. He's going to get hot. He's going to get hurt. I don't care. Like, if that's his one, like, real true knock that everyone has on him, like, I love Devonta Smith. I think he dominated colleges. And I mean, he played the X role here for Alabama when they had 3 other round 1 wide receivers on their team. They had Judy, Ruggs, and Waddle here, all within his time frame here on this roster, and he still played the X role. And I really like this kid. I think he's going to impress, and I think he's going to be drafted earlier than a lot of people anticipate. And I could see him being up there with Jamar Chase. You talk about that teardrop, and I think that Devonta Smith is the next closest for me on that teardrop. And then from there, like you said, you can kind of interchange the next few.
I'm not hating on Devonta Smith. Like, don't misread me. But when you're on arguably the best team for the last however many years, things are just going to break the right way for you. And so I wonder how much of that is system and how much, when Devonta Smith actually gets to the pros, that those outlier performances or outlier marks will regress to the mean. And I don't think he's a bad prospect at all. But I wonder if, there's going to be more scheming around. We can just guard Devonta Smith if he becomes the wide receiver too. All right. Hand raised as a teacher. Yes, Seth, you can go for it.
Now you ready? What about Waddle though? Because he's on the same team. Are you doing the same mental gymnastics to ding Waddle the same way that you're dinging Devonta Smith?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, that's
okay.
That's what I
mean, are you dinging Mac Jones too then?
Najee
Harris?
If we had time to talk about, yes, actually. But if we had time to talk about Mac Jones, I would say he is much more of a system quarterback. But these are the best offensive linemen, the best defense, the best, maybe not the best in every single thing, but these are, how many Alabama players are going to get drafted this year? A lot. And so you're playing with the best
last
of the best.
year and the year before and the year before. The answer is a lot.
There's prop bets on it for round 1.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think that he showed that he could be elite on the best team. And I think that that's certainly a plus. But there's also, I think there's at least a little bit of regression in the mean. I don't know if he can be the one on a team. We'll see.
Yeah, and I agree. And I agree with the we'll see, and can he be the one on a pro team? And one of the things that I'm really interested in is in reception perception. Matt Harmon graded him out as 78.9% success against press coverage, and that's one of the key indicators of making the leap from college to pros is pro DBs will line up on the line and actually jam you, whereas in college you get a lot more guys that'll line up close to the line, but they're not actually jamming you, because that's a really difficult technique to do. Be able to thrust your arms out, make contact with another person, and keep your feet light enough to be able to turn and run when they are, trying to run past you, right?
It separates the good from the great.
Right. And so he had a 78.9 success rate against press. That was the best of all 2021 wide receivers. It's also 89th percentile all time of reception perception. So he's been really successful against the press, which makes me think that transition to the pros may not be as hard for him. But I am still curious, and this is where like my background of like a history teacher and like stats kind of like blend together, is like no one has done it at his size before, which doesn't mean that it can't be done.
It's just that he has to be the outlier.
Right. The only way he can be successful is to be the outlier. This is my same argument with James Robinson. The only way that James Robinson can be successful next year is if he is the one outlier. He's been an outlier once already. Can he continue being an outlier? And that makes me
for me though with Devonta Smith, and I think he can be the outlier. I mean, he has a fluidity to him that you can't teach.
Yep.
Right. He's got, the loose hips. He has that natural born ability to just be in the right place, the right time. He has the hands, he has the catch radius. He just has the package to me, like minus the weight. Okay. So, and if he wasn't able to put on the weight at Alabama, he's not going to be able to put on the weight probably in the pros, maybe a little bit, but I don't think he's going to jump up 20 pounds. Right. So yes, that's the question mark here, but I just think that he has this ability to him, this natural born gift that you can't teach. And he just has. And I think that's what's going to carry him in the NFL.
Yeah. And I forgot whose tweet video I was watching. Maybe Eric Crocker, I believe it may have been. But he kept using the phrase like he plays big. And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of numbers people don't kind of see is the bigness of his play. And that he went across the middle. He ran routes across the middle. And against the SEC. So how many Alabama players
take a hit?
How many SEC players are going into the pros? A lot, right? So those are the guys that are going to be hitting him come, future Sundays. And he was able to not only take the hit, but pop right back up. He could get stuck. And usually he's getting stuck because it wasn't a great throw and he needs to like position his body to actually make a good catch on it. And then he gets stuck by a safety or a linebacker or something like that. Boom, pops right back up. Doesn't hesitate, doesn't get phased, and he's good to go. And to me, like I like Devonta Smith. I'm not taking him super early in any rookie drafts. But if he falls to the back of the first, like take him or take one of the guys that I'm like, all persnickety about. No, I'll take Devonta Smith. Thank you for letting me have him at 109 or 110, 111. Like, thank you.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with banking on a Heisman winner, especially a wide receiver when we haven't seen one in over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So, if he continues on, it'll be an outlier, but if there's an outlier to bet on, he's an outlier to bet on.
Yep.
All right.
All righty, everybody. Well, that is a wrap. Thank you for listening here to our rookie preview for the 2021 draft. Thank you, Seth, for joining us. We really appreciate your insight. It was a lot of fun. Can you tell everybody where to find you at?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at FFTheAtHomeDad. You can find a lot of my work at GridironExperts, as well as the NFL Draft Bible at Sports Illustrated. So please check it out.
And
awesome.
We just want to say thank you. I had a great night talking with you. I wish we could have gone through the rest of these. We're just a little over our timeline here. But it doesn't mean that we can't have more conversations here after the draft and touch base on these again once we know situation, schemes, and fits and kind of talk through it as the draft unwinds. So thank you, Seth. Thank you, everybody who tuned in and listened. And we will see you all here next week. That's the 30th for day 2, the NFL draft. Bradley and I will be going over instant reactions for day 1 and day 2, breaking down our thoughts, our analysis, and picks that we like or don't like. So we'll see you all here back next week on the 30th, 6 p.m. regular time. And thanks for tuning in.